Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please type them into the Q&A icon on your Zoom toolbar, and we'll get to them at the end of each presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 1st edition of Crop Talk, where I guess we're into seeding. I think we're gonna maybe get a couple days here where we might get some rain, which is a good thing still. But I think a lot of areas have got some guys scratching around and putting some seeds in the ground. So that's a good thing as we're getting going. I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about at the beginning here today was give you a few highlights of the crop report. The crop report was started, I guess, yesterday. It was the first one that came out, and there was some good information in there. And I just picked a few things out just to kind of give an update as to, I guess, what's been going on in the province. One of the interesting things that came out on the crop report was the information the stats can put out about projected acres. And if you look at spring wheat projected acres to be in Manitoba at 3.1 million acres, canola 3.2 million acres, and soybean 1.48 million acres, which are probably going to be our three bigger crops this year. And a fairly even breakdown between wheat and canola. When you look at seeding progress across the province, really we just begun. A lot of areas might be a little higher than 2%, and some areas there's been nothing done at all. So right now we're approximately 2% of the acres being sown so far. And producers have basically started with spring wheats, barley, oats, and peas out of all the regions, the central region. So the kind of in the middle of the province is probably about the highest, with about 10% of the acres sown so far. Did some looking at winter wheat and fall rye, and we talked a bit about it last week, and looked like most producers had good success in survival, 80 to 90% reporting of good good quality winter wheat coming up right now. And in most cases, all the fertilizer has been applied, and so the crops are getting ready to be sprayed for the first time for weed control in not too distant future. You definitely see a lot of the fields greening up in travel, so it's definitely easy to pick out those areas that winter wheat or fall rye has been planted. Spring wheat and barley sitting at about 4% complete across the province. Again, the central region having the most advanced. No oil seeds are planted so far, and I haven't heard of anybody planting any canola yet. I think it's definitely too early, and I think we've kind of learned our lesson over the last few years about trying to plant too early into cool conditions, and then the seed sitting in the ground too long, and then having flea beetle problems. So I think a lot of producers are waiting for soil definitely warm up. Field pea planting is about 4% complete across the province. And again, the central region having the higher amount of that. Southwest is about 3% complete. So when you look at the overall, and this is a good map that they produce every week during the crop reporting season. You kind of can see where we are compared to previous years, and so that's good to see. So again, we're right in that 2% range. So with that, I kind of a brief report from what we've seen on the crop report this week. Now we're going to go into, I guess, our topic for today. And Kim Brown is going to be on, and she's going to talk about some of the new tools for weed control for 24, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the one or two of the weeds that we really need to watch for. So I guess with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim right now and get her to start sharing her screen and go from there.
Okay, thanks, Lionel. Let me know when you can see that, and hopefully I'm in presentation mode. Can you see
Looks
that all
good.
right?
Yeah,
Super.
looks good.
Okay. Okay. Thanks so much for having me on today, and thanks everybody for listening. I've got a talk today about new weed control products in 2024. I'm going to talk about the products that are in the new weed control guide. Well, it's the guide to field crop protection, but of course, I think the weeds is the most important part of it. It's the biggest part of the guide, but that's just a joke we always have here in the office. It does have the insects and diseases portions there too. So, anyways, I'm going to talk to you about the weed control part of the guide. And just trying to advance my slides. Sorry.
Just click the screen, Kim, and it'll wake it up.
Okay. I'm going to get my pointer as well. Okay. So there we go. Okay. So that's the front cover of our guide to field crop protection 2024. It changes every year. There's lots of changes. It gets bigger and bigger, and still just $10. So those are available at all of the service centers, but also we do have them with us when we're traveling out and about. Most of us do have a box in the car with us when we're driving around. So if you do need one, let us know. We can get you a guide. If we're going to be in the area and that works out, we'll try to help you out as much as we can. We know it's not that easy to get to all the service centers as often as you'd like, but they are available at the service centers, or we can ship them from here in Carmen as well. We can ship those out. So we've made some changes this year to the weed control section of it. That's all I'm going to talk about today. There's some other changes as well in the other sections, but again, today we're just talking about the weeds. So I've really done a lot of changing with the tables at the beginning of the guide. A lot of guys go to the tables at the front of the guide and they pick their products from there, and then you go to the product pages later on in the guide and actually look up that product and get more information on it. Again, those are our product pages. That is not a label. That is a representation of the label. The label is a legal document, and so you're always strongly encouraged to go to to go look at the entire label, which is on the boxes or the jugs of chemical when you buy them, but also available through the PMRA website. So these product pages are a representation of the label, but they are by no means a complete label. So this is, I wanted to start off by showing you when we're using the guide and we're really wanting to talk about using pre products that have residual, and we need to get our terminology straight. We've always had these tables 16A. I'm just going to circle that. That's table 16A. This is the burn off tables. This is herbicides to control emerged weeds before seeding or after seeding, but prior to crop emergence. So we just call these the burn off tables. These are your burn off products. What we're talking about in these tables is the products that don't have any residual component, or we're not talking about the residual component in this guide, in this particular table, but this is for straight burn off. And so there's a couple of tables. There's 16A and 16B, but 16A has the crops listed across the top here, and then the products down the side. And so some of these products, for example, Authority Strike, or something like Heat Complete, we've got in brackets the burn off component. So that means that that product is going to appear elsewhere in the tables. It has a burn off component to it, but it also has a component that has some residual. So it's going to appear elsewhere. But in this case, we're only talking about the burn off component. In this case with heat, that's actually saflufenicil, the heat part of that. With Heat Complete, you also get peroxysulfone in there. That's got some residual in it. With something like Authority Strike, we've got carfentrazone or AIM. It's got AIM in there, but it also has Authority, which has residual in it. So there are some products in here that have more than one component to them, but this table we are looking purely at burn off. And so you need to know too, though, if you are looking at these products, that there is a second component to them. If we were looking at something like soybeans, I've just highlighted this table down here, you would look down the soybean column and you would look at all the products that are registered as a burn off product in front of, so basically prior to seeding or prior to crop emergence, depends on the product. You really have to watch the label on that one. But these are the products that would be registered. And then if I was to go to table 16B, then we can look at those same products. Those are still listed down the side, but now we have the weeds across the top. So then I can just pick a couple of those products that I was looking at for, for soybeans. There's Authority Strike, there's Focus, there's the Heat brands, and then we can take a look across here and see what weeds they're, what weeds they're registered on. So this is how you would first start with the burn off tables, and then after that you would go to the tables that actually are for each crop. So every one of our crops will have every one of our crops will have a table. Like this is table 6, which is soybeans. And all of the tables, there's one for wheat, there's one for wheat, there's one for barley, there's one for oats, rye, field beans, dry beans, field peas, all of the tables. We have them also for fall weed control, for forages. There's tables basically at the beginning of the guide. I think there's 23 tables altogether. So if I was still on, looking at soybeans, I was looking at my burn off table for soybeans. What we've done now with the guide is we've taken these products. These all used to be in one big table. These are all the products that are registered for use in soybeans that have weed control while the soybeans are being grown. Now, the pre-emergent products before were mixed in the whole table, and you just kind of had to know which products were to be used basically they're pre-emerge or pre-seed, but basically pre-emerge to the weeds before the weeds have come up. And now so I've separated those out. And so now they're in here, it'll say pre-emergent with residual weed, with residual control. And so we've got this group of products up here. And then down below, we have post-emergent. And sometimes we have this statement, some products may be used pre or post. And for example, with soybeans, you could use dicamba either as a pre or dicamba as a post. Just a little aside, sometimes people are wondering, like if you're wondering why do we have some things are italicized and some things are not. If it's in the guide and it's a product that stands alone, that it's not got a generic component to it, and it has its own product page, those are italicized. Or something like dicamba and ethylfluralin, that's edge, but there are other products that contain other ethylfluralin now. So instead of listing it as edge, we list it as ethylfluralin, and that is not italicized. There's footnotes here, so check the bottom of the table. I haven't put them down here, but there's footnotes on the bottom of almost every table. We do have page numbers in for the first time in a couple of years. We've had some issues at the print level getting the page numbers put in properly, and so unfortunately for the last couple of years, they weren't available, and I do apologize for that, but I am very glad to say that we made sure they are in this year. So now all of the products are on the page numbers, and now every single table as well will have this next column in, will be the herbicide resistance grouping. So you can use that when you're picking a product. If we're talking about picking some of these products that have residual weed control that help us out with our resistant weed issues, and then our post-emergent products as well that we use while the crop is growing. And you can now take a look at where in this column those products fit and according to the herbicide grouping. So with that, I urge you all to, take a look at the tables, let me know what you think, and hopefully they'll make it a little bit easier for you picking some of these products that we want you to be using with the pre-products with residual. So going forward, we do have some new products in the guide. We don't have any new herbicide groups. If any of you have heard me speak this winter, we haven't had a new herbicide group in over 40 years, but we do have some new products that are within the existing groups that we've got. So the products that we've got listed here, I think there's 11. There's Advantage Glufosinate Plus, Authority Strike, Battalium, Blackhawk Evo, Callisto, Intruvix 2, On Deck, Oxbow, Restore NXT, Select Plus, and Vero FX. And I'm just going to give you a really quick rundown on all of these quickly. So Advantage Glufosinate Plus is basically just glufosinate plus quinclorac added into it, registered on Liberty Link canola. And the addition of the quinclorac would help things like cleavers, volunteer flax, barnyard grass, green foxtail would help out that glufosinate. So you can check that one out in the guide. The next one we have is Authority Strike. This is sulfentrazone, which is our Authority brand, which is a group 14. Plus carfentrazone, which is another group 14, that's our aim. Now this is co-formulated, and in the past we've had something called Authority Charge. That's been off the market now. There may still be some supplies around. I don't think there is, but you may run across basically an Authority Charge, which is really, it's the same products, but it was not co-formulated. So this is co-formulated, which means everything's all in one jug. So it's registered for wheat. S&D means spring and durum. And again, on our weed tables, that's what we have everything listed on our weed tables as S, D, and W for spring, durum, and winter. So just watch that when you're picking products, especially for those of you who are growing durum wheat or for your winter wheat growers, make sure that the products are registered for those classes of wheats. Also, Authority Strikes mustard is registered on mustard, chickpeas, faba beans, field pea, flax, sunflowers, and soybeans. And basically, you're getting a burn off plus your residual weed control. So this is something that would show up in our burn off table, and then it also shows up in any of the tables, any of these crop tables as well. And in those crop tables, we're talking about the residual weeds that part of this product works on, or sorry, the residual part of this product, we're talking about the weeds that they kill. So you can kind of see what the burn off gets off the one table, what the residual gets off the next table, and then you can, you can go to the product page as well to take a look at all of that. That's all on the product pages. When looking at Battalium, this is a UPL product, and Battalium did come out a few years ago, but there was some issues with some formulations, so it was removed, and it has come back again. It's a new formulation. This is a good product. It's got lots going on here. There's flucarbazone, which is basically our Everest and Sierra products. We've got fluroxapyr, that's a group 2. Flucarbazone's group 2. We've got fluroxapyr, that's a 4. We've got MCPA, which is a 4, and then bromoxynil, which is a 6. So basically like Buctrol-M in there. Again, it's a new formulation, so and it's been very, very extensively tested. So going forward, this will be a really good product to be working with. It's registered for all classes of wheat, so spring, durum, and winter. Make sure you add non-ionic surfactant with it. And again, we have seen this product before, but there was, because of formulation issues, it has been redone. And again, if you're battling any group 1 resistant grass weeds, and if you want that flushing weed control coming from that flucarbazone, this is a good product to try. Another one is Black Hawk Evo. This is very similar to Black Hawk. We already have Black Hawk as well, but they've added dichloropropyl to it now. So they've got 2,4-D, which is a group 4. There's dichloropropyl, which is a group 4, and pyriflufen, which is a group 14. So this is a burn-off product. It's registered for spring, durum, and winter wheat, barley, rye, both spring and winter. So if anybody's growing spring rye, this is still a good product. Triticale, field corn, and canary grass. Oops, sorry, spelling mistake there. That's canary grass. It's registered pre-seed or up to 3 days post-seeding, so make sure you watch that. For oats, it is registered, but it must be a minimum 7 days prior to seeding, the same as Black Hawk is. And it's also registered for fall burn down with no spring recropping restrictions. And I do like to see this on the labels, on some of these labels. When they say use the high rate, there is a rate range in here, and use the high rate under stress conditions, larger weeds, and optimum wild buckwheat control. So when you have that rate range, use that high rate to make sure, when you need it, to make sure that these products work as well as they can. Now, I've got in brackets here a new tool for kochia. We're seeing a lot of this dichloropropyl, which is a group 4. That is not a new product. That's been in our old, if you remember Estaprop, that's been around for a very long time. There is more dichloropropyl in this product and another product coming up than there is in Estaprop, a little bit more in this product. And so the dichloropropyl has been shown to do fairly well on kochia. So it's a new, again, it's not a new tool really, but it's not something that we have really been using up till now for kochia control. So this is something to take a look at in your burn off. I do know the kochia's up already, and so this is something to take a look at because of that dichloropropyl in there. So Callisto, this is a new product for us, new in Western Canada. This is not a new product elsewhere, though, in the corn growing areas. Callisto is a very well-known product, been out for a very long time. It's mesotrione, which is a group 27. It's basically registered for field corn from 2 to 6 leaf. Now, elsewhere, Callisto is registered at a much higher rate. Basically, this is a half rate that we've got registered here in Manitoba. And it must be put on with atrazine and Agril 90, and it is only registered as post. Elsewhere, Callisto is used a lot as a pre ahead of corn, but in Manitoba, the registration is the half rate, or the rate that's, I think it's 63 mils. I'm not sure. I think that's right. Anyways, yeah, 63 mils. And then, but it's post. It must be post, and it's 2 to 6 leaf. It doesn't have a lot of weeds on the label. It's really only registered technically for volunteer canola, but adding in that atrazine is going to, bring you some lamb's quarters and some pigweed and pick up the grass control as well. So that's a new product for corn growers. And again, it's a group 27, and it's a different group 27 than what we've been dealing with in corn, than what we already have on the ground here in Manitoba. Intruvix, Again, this is not new. This is actually basically the same as Intruvix 1, or just Intruvix, which is tribenuron, which is a group 2, plus dicamba, which is a group 4, plus carfentrazone, which is AIM, that's a group 14. But now it's co-formulated. Before the first iteration of Intruvix was Copac. So there's more than one jug in the box. Now it's co-formulated, so it's all in one jug. And so again, exactly the same product. It's registered on wheat, spring, durum, and winter, barley, and oats, up to 1 day prior to seeding. Also registered for fallow and post-harvest. So again, watch. We will see the old Intruvix start to disappear out of inventory. Then going forward, it will be this Intruvix 2. But for now, both will be in the guide as long as there's still inventories of the original product around. On deck, this is the new product from Corteva. And so this is a very similar concept to what we see with Infinity, which we've had around for a very long time. We have bromoxynil, which is a group 6. And in this case, we've got our group 27 is tolpyrrolate. And so it's registered on wheat, which is spring, durum, and winter, also on barley. And I like to see this as well. Again, a lot of the newer registrations we're seeing this. There's a standard rate and also a high rate, depending on the weed size, but also weed population. So remember, when we've got higher weed populations, we need to make sure that we're doing a really good job with coverage and with using, as high a rate as is registered to make sure we get those weeds, because high populations are harder to kill than thinner stands of weed. And so when you do have those bigger weeds and those higher populations of those weeds, you're urged to use.
Excuse me, Kim, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yep.
We're getting some crazy feedback. I don't know what changed. Can you? I don't know what's changed. There's some audio feedback that's really echoing, and
I don't know. There's nothing here. What if I put earbuds in?
Yeah, that would be great. Yep.
Try that. Sorry, guys.
No, that's all right. I wasn't sure if it was just me or everyone, so I had to check.
No, it's everyone.
Yeah.
Right. Hang on. Let me see if this will.
Yeah.
Okay, can you still hear me?
That's better. Yeah, use that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Honestly, it's very quiet in here. There's nothing going on here, so it's obviously.
It's something. So this sounds much better.
No,
this is great. Thanks.
Apologies for that. Okay, so on deck, again, I really like to see that on the labels. I think that's a really good, responsible thing to have on the labels. We need to make sure that we're using the proper rates to make sure our products last as long as they can. And so with on deck, again, a great new product coming from Corteva, and apply with an MSO, which is a methylated seed oil, a COC, which is a crop oil concentrate, or HSOC, which is high surfactant oil concentrate. So we do have those. There's at the front of the guide. In the intro section of the weeds, we do have a section on adjuvants. So there's an adjuvant table as well, so you can take a look at what adjuvants are available. Oxbow, this is a new product. And so again, this is dichloroprop. We're seeing again more of that dichloroprop and bromoxynil. It's registered for wheat, spring, durum, and winter, and barley. And again, I'd like to see this on the label. They've got a rate range in here, and they say use the high rate for heavy weed pressure. So this looks like it's going to be a really good broadleaf weed product, weed control product. Again, I'm saying with quotes around the new tool for kochia. Now there is quite a bit more dichloroprop in this one than there is in the original Estaprop. That's not something that that we would have normally thought of using something like Estaprop for kochia, but there is more dichloroprop, and down in North Dakota, they've been finding pretty good success with dichloroprop. We know I'm going to be talking about kochia later, so I won't talk about the group 4 resistance, but hopefully this is a tool that will help us out in our kochia battle. So Restore NXT, this is a new product from Corteva. This has aminopyrrolid, which is a group 4, plus fluorpyroxafen, which is a group 4 as well. Now that's a newer product for us, or a newer active ingredient for us, but we're seeing that in these industrial or not cropland uses. We're seeing that fluorpyroxafen being used. And so this is basically a sister compound or a very similar compound to haloxafen, or the Arylex molecule. This is registered on permanent grass pasture and rangeland. It's registered for in use in spring and early summer, but basically before bud stage or early flowering. And you need to add Gateway, which is their adjuvant, the Corteva adjuvant, a non-ionic surfactant, or an MSO. This looks like a nice new product. I don't see leafy spurge on the label on this one. I know a lot of guys, that's one of the problems that a lot of our guys are battling in their grass pastures and rangeland, but it does have a 2,4-D tank mix option. And I think when you throw the 2,4-D in there, that'll get you a little bit of control of that as well. So again, a new product for grass pastures and rangelands. Select Plus, this is coming from UPL, and it's basically clethodim, which is basically Select, which is group 1, plus Quizalofop, which is a group 1 again. That's basically the old Assure, registered on lots of crops here. So alfalfa for seed production, canola, chickpea, dry beans, faba beans, field peas, lentils, flax, lentils, mustards, which is brown, oriental, and yellow, and then also soybeans. And basically this is full rate of Select plus a half rate of Assure. That's going to help pick up some of the more, some of the more harder to kill weeds, like especially thinking like your wild oats, And so as long as you don't have group 1 resistance, this is still going to be a really good product. You're going to have a couple of different kinds of group 1s in there. You've got a DIM and you've got a FOP. And again, if you don't have group 1 resistance, this is a product that you should be looking at. And I think this is my last one, Vero FX. This is thiene carbazone, which is basically Vero, plus fluroxapyr, which is a 4. So thiene carbazone is a group 2, fluroxapyr is a group 4, registered on spring and winter wheat. Now this is new. This is the only group 2 that's an emulsifiable concentrate. Everything else is a solution. So, think the thick liquids, the ones that are, harder to rinse out, a little bit slower to mix, that type of thing. So really great ease of mixing with this, lots of tank mix partners. This is not something that though you would want to be tank mixing with something like an Infinity FX because there's already fluroxapyr in that already. But again, this fluroxapyr, this is a product that, we know we're using with our, it's a good product so far for our kochia control. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about battling kochia in 2024. And so some of you have heard me speak quite a bit this winter about kochia because we have lots of weeds in the province to be concerned of, and kochia is probably our #1 weed right now. It's because it's right here and it's in front of everybody, and it seems to be expanding. And so actually in the last weed survey that we did in 2022, it actually only showed up as number 12 on the top 20 list, which I thought it might have been a little bit higher, but that I guess that's just where it was that particular year. And so, of course, we know when you all see these, we've got lots of kochia probably about this stage already. It's coming up. I always think it's an odd weed. It's a warm season weed, but it does come up very, very early in the spring. Normally our warm season weeds come up quite a bit later, but kochia is something that comes up very early in the spring. So it's something that we need to get a handle on, and you need to do everything you can to get those little guys out of there because they get really big, really fast, and then they're really tough to get in crops sometimes. So when we're talking about glyphosate-resistant kochia, I'll just put my circles up now. And so when you see, this is exactly what glyphosate-resistant kochia looks like when you start to see it in a field. And I think a lot of us are very familiar with this, but just to go over this for people that maybe aren't that familiar with glyphosate-resistant kochia yet, don't worry, you will get there. But you'll see something like a carcass, like this one up here, an absolute carcass. We like to see carcasses, and then less than, a foot and a half away, there's a plant that looks absolutely fine. And so, you need to look at all the things that could have gone wrong. This could be, you need to, is it a spray miss? Was it a plug nozzle? Do I have the right product? Obviously, yes, because one of them's dead and one of them's not. You can't explain this away with anything else. There's no crop shading. This one didn't get shaded out, and this one's, out in the open. They're both out in the open. This wide row soybeans crop isn't shading anything out right now. It's too small. And so when you see that, and then you see over here again, these same pictures elsewhere in the soybean field, you've got this one over here that's circled is looking a little bit wilted, but then this guy looks pretty good. Doesn't really look like anything's happening here. And then over here in this last picture, we've actually got dead bits on this, but it's starting to regrow. And then this bigger plant here is very yellow. It's yellowed up, but it's going to come back and it's going to be just fine.
Cam, I'm
So
going to interrupt
if
you
you're
again.
doubting,
Sorry, Cam. Sorry. Can you
Yeah.
The audio is getting weird again, so let's catch it before it
Okay.
gets too bad. Do you want to just unplug your audio and just plug it back in again, or plug in your try your headset or buds? Don't know
Yeah.
what's going on here, but let's sort it out early.
Okay. I plugged it in and plugged it back.
Oh, still
Is that okay?
No,
Still back.
it's not.
Do you want me to unplug?
Sure,
Okay. How's this?
not good.
Not good. That is too bad. I don't
Do you
really
have
any-
do you have two laptops there? Is an audio turned on in one laptop, I'm wondering? Or is it just screens that you have there?
I have a laptop and screens.
Okay.
But if I turn the audio off, then I don't think you'll be able to hear me.
Well,
If I
that's
turn
true.
it off on my laptop, you won't be able to hear me.
Yeah, it's getting worse actually. Can you try your earbuds again?
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. Thanks for your patience.
Okay. You know what? Can we try something? Can Marla's next door, can I speak on her computer and she'll click through on the slides?
You bet.
Okay, let's try that.
It's too bad I didn't have any interlude music here, but we'll have to just be
We're
patient.
going to make this work.
You bet we are.
I'll just say next slide. Is that okay? Okay. Can you hear me okay?
It sounds great. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So Marla's going to advance the slides for me. So Marla's already advanced. We've already gone on to the next one. Just basically, if you want to get your kochia tested, we can do that right here in Manitoba at the Pest Surveillance Initiative Lab. The logo is up there in the top of the page there. And this is a copy of what the sample that had gone in a while ago. And basically what they're doing is they're looking for different copies of the gene that normally should break down, that should the glyphosate should work on, and then glyphosate works on that enzyme, and the plant just dies. So what happens with this plant, it's sometimes called target site amplification. It's also called overexpression now. And basically the plant just starts making more copies of that gene. So if you have less than 2 copies, like on this little graph here, on this little picture here, it would still be glyphosate susceptible. But the minute the plant starts to make more than 3 copies of that same target site, that same enzyme, the glyphosate starts to not work. And that's why you see different variations of how resistant it is, basically based on how many copies of that gene the plant has. So again, if you want to get your kochia tested, you can send it into the PSI lab. I think it's $125, and there's a sampling protocol on their website, or I can help you with that if anybody needs that. Next slide, please. Okay, so just very quickly, I've talked about this a lot. This is an older slide. We've actually had group 4 resistance going back for quite a while now. So this is actually some work out of Alberta in 2021. I won't go into too much detail, but as far back as 2021, they were starting to see that we were seeing low levels of dicamba and fluroxypyr resistance in kochia. Those are products that we have been using and used quite extensively, and they have worked very well for us in the past, but they are starting to fail. At this point, there wasn't a lot. If you're looking at the Venn diagram, there isn't a lot of resistance yet. We're not seeing a lot of cross resistance yet between the dicamba and the fluroxypyr. They're both group 4s. They're different chemical families within that group 4, and so that's good. We're not seeing a lot of, again, cross resistance between the dicamba and the fluroxypyr yet, but we do know that this resistance is growing. So next slide, please. So just to tell you, just to go quickly through this again, any of you who've seen me talk this winter, we know that we've had, as far back as the 70s, the group 5 stopped working on kochia. In the group 2s haven't worked in a very long time, 87 in North Dakota and Kansas, 88 Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So our group 2s basically do not work and have not worked in many, many years on kochia. Group 4s, we started to see those fail in 1994 in Montana. For the first time in Canada, we saw that in 2015 in Saskatchewan. Our group 9, which is glyphosate, so we saw that starting to fail in 2007 in Kansas, and in 2011 in Alberta, we saw that for the first time. And this is new. The PPO inhibitors, group 14, 2022 North Dakota, there's several populations, and in 2021 in Saskatchewan. Next slide, please. So we're just going to talk quickly about group 4 resistance. So this is heat. This is a study from Charles Geddes. He's been working on this population that came out of Saskatchewan, out of West Central Saskatchewan, where they had some suspected group 14 resistance. So again, across the first 2 rows, we have some susceptible plants. They have replanted 1 healthy kochia plant in per pot. And then the back row was what was considered to be a resistant population. And you can see the saflufenicil, that's heat. And you can see at the different rates we've got there. That 25 grams, that's basically the field rate of heat that we'd be looking at. And so you can see the susceptible populations, it's still working, and the resistant population in the back, even at the 79 grams rate, which is basically a 3x rate, even there's still some growth at the 250, which is a 10x rate. So we're starting to see that herbicide, that failing on this population. Next slide, please. So this is AIM or carfentrazone. Again, that the rate there that's circled in with the red, or not circled, sorry, it has the red square around it. We can see that is not working. I think that's the 30 mil rate of AIM. And you can see the 2 susceptible populations across the front. We're still getting a little bit of growth on those with that AIM, but across the back, that resistance population, that AIM is really not working at all. And in these rate studies, if you look at the rates across the bottom there, they don't go up. They go up by, they start at 0, and there's our field rate, and then we have all the way up to 100 times field rate. So you can see, and sometimes at very, very high rates, these products are still failing, are really failing. Next slide, please. And this is good news. This is Ultra Blazer. It's working actually on that resistant population. Not that a lot of you guys are using Ultra Blazer, but that is the same chemical family as Reflex. So not sure whether or not Reflex is still going to work for us, but that is good to know that at least some of the group 14 still have some activity. Next slide, please. So with authority, this is sulfentrazone. Now this is that 88 mil rate that's supposed to, that's the kochia rate on this. And we see this one, now this is because this is soil applied. These trials are done a little bit differently. They have 20 viable seeds per pot. This is a clay loam soil. And then this is basically 6 weeks after treatment. And you can see at that field rate that should have killed the kochia in that resistant population across the back, it's not working. Next slide, please. Hang on a sec. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So this is authority again, but in a sandy loam soil, and we do know that in a sandy loam soil, the products, some of our soil applied herbicides aren't bound quite as tightly. There's less organic matter, less clay particles, and so we do see this working a little bit better in that sandy loam soil. But again, we are seeing some growth at those field rates, some growth of that resistant population. So that's good to see that works a little bit better in this soil. But again, we definitely do have some resistance going on there. Next slide, please. So one thing just to notice about this, if you just look at these bars, the red and the black curves there are the susceptible populations, and the resistant curve is in blue. And I've drawn a little green dashed line across the middle there, and that's basically what it would take. That's basically the rate it would take to kill 50% of the population. And you can see that that's in a lot of these cases, especially with saflufenicil, we're looking at you would need 100 times field rate. So when you see resistance here, like it's full blown. These products are just not going to work anymore. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do? Kochia, when we're talking about kochia suppression or control, basically you need to assume all kochia in Manitoba is group 9 resistant. What can we use where we can use it? A group 3, which is something like an edge ethylfluralin, group 4, dicamba, fluroxapyr, 2,4-D, especially the high rates of 2,4-D choline that we're seeing in the enlist system, dichlorprop now. Group 6, we've got Partner, which is bromoxynil and other products. Insight and Tough, those are our group 6s. We've got our group 10 is our Liberty. Our group 14 is Authority, Heat, Blackhawk, Veraxer. And then our group 27s are Infinity, On Deck, Lotus, Armazon Impact. And suppression, we do get suppression of kochia out of the group 15, which is Zidua. That's pyroxasulfone that we also see in Fierce and Focus and things like Heat Complete and Authority Supreme, that type of thing. But with growing group 4 resistance in especially dicamba and fluroxypyr, we don't know about the others yet. And group 14 reported resistance reported in North Dakota, several, and Saskatchewan 1, and now Alberta as well. Basically, if we lose that, and as Marla has advanced for me, you can see if we take away our group 4s, we don't know how well our 2,4-D and dichloroprop will continue to work because we've lost, we're losing other group 4s. And for now, the dicamba and the fluroxypyr are probably still working in places, but we need to be aware that they are starting to fail. As well as our group 14s, I'm sure are still working in some places, but they are starting to fail. So we need to make sure we have, we're using the other tools to keep these products as long as possible. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'll go through this very, very quickly, just talking about layering cultural weed control and chemical weed management. So in these are studies from Charles Geddes. He's done these in Lethbridge, Alberta. And basically this was a 4-year rotation starting with spring wheat, followed by canola, and then spring wheat again, and then lentils. Now lentils is a very poorly competitive crop. Very susceptible to infestation of group 2 weeds. There's just not a lot of products you can use in that crop. And so the top row there is kind of worst case scenario. Those are wide rows and a really light seeding rate. And the bottom row there is a better case scenario. It's a narrow row and a much higher seeding rate. And you can see just based on, they've done everything the same. Every year, the same products are sprayed as you normally would use. But by the time you get to the lentil year, in the top row, which is, worst case scenario, again, we've got wide seeding, we've got wide rows, which are, and a low seeding rate. So we've got a lot less crop competition. You can see that lentil crop on that top row is very full of kochia. When you look at directly below, the lentil crop down below, when we've skinnied up the rows and we've used a much higher seeding rate on all of those crops, there's still a little bit of kochia in there, but there's a heck of a lot less. You can see the kochia along the sides of the plot there. You can see the level of infestation that there could be in that lentil crop. So just by doing that and simply using crop competition, that has really made a difference, especially in that lentil year. So Marla, if you can go to the next slide and just click until you get to the bars on the table. Yeah, next one. Yeah, that one. So if you basically the stats shows you that if you decrease the row width and you increase the seeding rates, you will decrease kochia biomass by 80%, not doing anything different in the spray tank. Next slide. If you can do the same just to get to that rectangle in the middle of the screen. This is just all the stats. You don't need to worry about that at all. And again, same thing for kochia seed bank. So we reduce kochia biomass, but we also reduce kochia seed bank by 63%, which is good because going forward, then that's less kochia that's going to be growing because we've put a lot less seed back in the ground. Next slide, please. So now talking about just rotation diversity, we've done the same thing here. You're looking at that rotation where you've got spring wheat, canola, spring wheat followed by lentil. If all you're doing is swapping out the spring wheat for winter wheat, we're still using skinny rows. In this case, we're using skinny rows and we're using a good plant population. You can see when you get to that lentil year, down in the very bottom right-hand corner there's hardly any kochia in there. And then if you look in the top right-hand corner, that alfalfa meadow brome, there's basically almost no kochia in there at all. So that will work if you've got a use for a crop like that, a more perennial crop that you're going to be cutting and taking these weeds out and not letting them go to seed. And that's a good way to get rid of or to reduce your annual weed population is by using a forage crop, a perennial forage crop where you're cutting that a couple of times a year or once or maybe twice a year. And, you're not letting those weeds go to seed and you will drastically reduce the amount of kochia in those plots. So if you can hit the next slide and just go to the boxes in the middle. So basically, if you've introduced winter wheat into the rotation, you decrease kochia biomass by 64%, not doing anything different, just using winter wheat instead. Again, we know winter wheat comes up nice and early in the spring. It's very competitive, very early, which is exactly when kochia starts to get going. So you're using, you're using that to get up ahead of the kochia. And alfalfa meadow brome will actually decrease kochia biomass by 99%. So that if you've got a way to incorporate any of those into your rotations, please do, because it makes a big difference in fighting kochia. And my next slide, I think this is my last one. So I wanted to finish off by saying, make sure you have a source of good, clean water for spraying. This is essential in years where water could be scarce. Now, we've had a little bit of moisture here in the province lately. We've got some more coming this week, but we by no means are out of the woods yet when it comes to the dry conditions. And we know that we may be You know, we know that our water sources may be compromised, especially if we get into some really dry conditions. So you need to secure, I'm urging you to secure a secondary source of water. I would urge you to get it tested. I would prefer to see you to use AgVise, or Winfield does testing as well. So you could talk to your Winfield people about that. But with AgVise testing, you actually will get recommendations come with that, especially if a lot of times we mitigate the risks of hard water using ammonium sulfate. And so they actually will help you. They actually give a recommendation for that. And also make sure your water is clean, filter out any sediment that's there, because we don't need that. The suspended particles they will render things like glufosinate and glyphosate basically inactive. So we need to make sure that our water is clean and that it's not basically that if it is hard water, we can mitigate that by using some ammonium sulfate. So that's all I had. Sorry again for all of the audio issues today.
No problem, Kim. I've got a couple questions that have come up. One is, has there been any reports of glyphosate resistant lamb's quarters in lamb's quarters in Western Canada?
Yeah, not in Western Canada, not yet. We hear about it every year. It's suspected every year, but a lot of times lamb's quarters is one of those weeds that it escapes a lot of our herbicide sprays. It gets very big very quickly. If you look at a lot of the labels, they'll say 6-leaf or maybe even an 8-leaf lamb's quarters, but that can be a very, very small lamb's quarters. They'll put on pairs of leaves very, very quickly. And when it's small, and lots of times it's out of staging. It's a weed that it's very hard to wet weed. It's got issues because, you know, there's like the salt secretions that are actually on the leaves themselves that actually prevent some of the herbicide being absorbed. And so it's a weed that, especially when it gets hot and dry, it's hard to get the weed to take up enough of enough product. So it's hard to hit them. You've got to have good coverage because they tend to be very small, but they do get out of stage very quickly, and you really have to be on top of that. So we hear about it every year. We do hear, it is suspected, but there's been nothing confirmed to my knowledge, nothing in Western Canada.
Okay, and this one, I was thinking about it, and somebody sent it in as well. When we were talking about dichloroplop, and some of the products having, you had mentioned it's a higher rate than Esterprop. Is there any issues with crop tolerance, leaf staging for spring?
Yeah. No, it's got full registrations for PMRA, and PMRA is one of the most strict or rigid or very stringent registering bodies in the world. Like, we have an extremely safe pesticide system in Canada. And so these products have to be proven and proven well. And the reason I said it, it's got more dichloroprop in it. You can just do the math on that. You just have to look at the rate and look at the concentration of dichloroprop in there. It's just, in the past, Estaprop is not a product that I think would have been a go-to product for kochia. In fact, it does have kochia on the label, but I think it says only 2-inch tall. That's pretty tiny kochia. So when you're looking at a product, just a little bit more of a rate on there, the higher rates should help out. And it's the same with the 2,4-D. The 2,4-D choline rates in the Enlist system are a lot higher than what we would normally use in crop with regular 2,4-D. So in the Enlist system, when you're using that 2,4-D, you're using a much higher rate, and you're going to get better kochia control using that 2,4-D. Again, that's not something that would be my first go-to product to take out kochia, would be 2,4-D. But when you're looking at appropriate rates of that product, that makes a big difference.
Okay, another question just came in. You mentioned winter wheat being good, effective for competition for kochia. What about fall rye?
Oh yeah, same thing, because anything you can do to change things up, and especially our early germinating weeds. Again, kochia is an oddball. It's a warm season weed, and all the other warm season weeds come up late because they need more warmth. Kochia, though, it's up now. It's been up for a couple of weeks in places. It's tiny still, but these are the ones that get away on you and get really big, and get beyond staging by the time you get a crop up and it's time to spray that crop. So if we don't, these are the ones that we're trying to hit with our pre-burns. And but if you've got a crop like winter wheat or fall rye up, then you've already got crop competition. You've already going to start shading it out, and even something like fall rye has allelopathy, where the roots exude certain products that actually they affect how other plants germinate. So they actually it's called allelopathy anyways, and it doesn't affect the fall rye at all, but it does make it, it does affect how weeds grow around it and how other plants grow around it. And it actually like reduces the growth of weeds around those fall rye plants, which is why sometimes even on a very, quite a thin fall rye field, they're usually quite clean and not very weedy at all.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I got right now, Kim, but you're going to hang on for till the end here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have one just popped
sorry.
up, Lionel. I can read it out here.
Yeah, please.
Alfalfa is I'm gonna mess this word up. Anatagonia of kochia, I think.
Autotoxic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the root system, I think by the
Yeah.
root system. That was a comment, I suppose, not necessarily a question.
Okay, so the question was that about alfalfa being autotoxic? Is that
Anatagon, not ANTAGONIST.
an antagonist?
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
Lori. Yeah.
Is that right? That's okay.
Mhm,
No.
yeah. Mhm.
Antagonist? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Alfalfa
not.
is an antagonist against kochia, I think, by the root system. Is that correct?
I'm not sure on that. I guess it could. That's not something I've heard about that. I know. Yeah. Sorry, I haven't heard that. But if anybody has any information on that, let me know. But I hadn't heard that specifically about alfalfa. Like it's not as well, if it is true, it's certainly not well documented. Like something like allelopathy and fall rye, very well documented. So, but to my knowledge, fall rye was really the only crop that does that against other weeds. Alfalfa is autotoxic to itself. So it like, and that's actually a compound that's in the leaves that actually that it prevents other alfalfa plants from growing near it, which is why you can't thicken up an old stand. But I don't really know that it has anything to do with weeds.
Okay. I think that's all.
Okay. Thanks, Kim, and thanks, Lori, for getting that question up there. And okay, so now into the crop scouting panel, and I think we got time for one question for sure, anyways. And this one came in during the week here. I guess right after we got some decent rains here, and I guess with recent rain events and more on the way, producers are looking at seeding into good moisture. With that, producers are looking at seeding shallow for quick emergence. The question is, how shallow could you plant peas? And I already added my question about soybeans as well. I figured if Dennis, if we were going to mention peas, we should maybe talk about soybeans as well.
Okay, Lionel, can you hear me okay?
You bet.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so as far as we have to be a little bit careful with planting depth. We like to definitely get peas into moisture, and now we have better moisture now. But there is a temptation to plant shallow. And you know how the weather changes in Manitoba? We plant shallow and all of a sudden we don't get any more rain. I would still recommend getting peas in that inch to inch and a quarter range. That would be ideal. On dry years, we can go deeper. Soybeans, I would be the same way as well, because I've seen some growers over the years plant super shallow on soybeans and plant to like half an inch thinking they're going to get real quick emergence. And it dries out. And that can happen very quickly in our conditions. So I'd still like to put it into decent moisture. So in that inch and a quarter range, especially now we have better moisture, that's something that I would recommend. So.
Okay, Dennis, would the way the soybeans come out of the ground, would sowing too shallow maybe not help them anchor themselves good, or
Not so much in the anchoring part of it, because the roots will go down. But what ends up happening is that if that soil dries out, and we've seen this from time to time over the years, where you plant into what you think is reasonably good moisture and you plant very shallow, so that half an inch range, and then all of a sudden everything dries out. So there's enough moisture there for the seed to germinate, but then things just kind of desiccate off. Now, last year I did see a bit of an exception to that, where some growers did plant I wouldn't say shallow, but they didn't want to go as deep as they normally or as what they maybe could have gone. So maybe just to clarify, they were planting at that 1.25 inch range to 1.5 inch, but there was some seed that ended up into dry conditions, and it didn't swell up to any degree, and it actually did germinate almost a month later. Now, this year it's a bit of a different scenario with the moisture conditions that we're looking at better moisture conditions now. So I think just putting it into that, 1.25 inch range for both crops with the moisture that we have this year would be good. If you're on a sandier soil, and you don't have that good moisture, then peas you can go deeper. You can go 1.5 to 2 inches, and even in some cases, if it's super dry, you could go down to 3 if you had to for peas. But soybeans would be max 1.5 inches.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank-
Lori, I'm just going to get you to check again, see if there's any other questions that might have come up. I think we've lost my question panel.
No, that's all right. Just give me 1 second to see if I can butcher another word. Couple comments that I can send off to. How about chemical control of kochia? Can we use? Well, I'm not going to be able to say that word. Aminoprolid and halofexin menthol. Kim, I guess that one's for you.
That one's for me. Okay, yeah. Aminopyrrolid, as far as I know, is only registered in like what I call industrial uses, but also basically just not cropland uses. So that's a Corteva product that's registered in their their rangeland and their industrial field platform. Haloxafen, which is Arylex, is not a kochia product at all. You'll get maybe some suppression on it, but it will not work. So you cannot use, if you have if you ever have a product that has haloxafen in it, but other things that will also do kochia, that's good. But haloxafen on its own is not a kochia product. It's a great product. It does a lot of really good things to a lot of other weeds. Just its strong point is not kochia.
So
but
haloxafen plus 2,4-D is a second part of that.
yeah, haloxafen 2,4-D. The 2,4-D will pick up some of that. Will help pick up some of that kochia. But again, how much 2,4-D and how much are you using? Again, there probably are better products. I mean, if you're good, you're talking group 4s. If you're talking haloxafen and 2,4-D, those are both group 4s. You've got other products that we know are starting to become resistant, but you've still got dicamba, you've still got fluroxapyr, and now we've got dichloroprop as well in some of the newer products. Again, that's not a new molecule, and that's an old group 4. But those products we know do a better job on kochia than something like haloxafen. Again, haloxafen, the Arylex molecule, is great, but just not for kochia.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Okay, just a few slides to finish off the day. Kim mentioned about the field crop protection guide, and she mentioned that if you're wanting one, make sure to get a hold of the Ag Service Center or one of us, and we'll be able to get them to you. The hay listing service is still up and going, as well as if you're looking at doing some burning, you should be checking the crop residue burning website to make sure if it's a burn day or not. The crop production extension specialists, there's all our contact information and our locations. So if you're needing any help or needing some advice regarding this spring's crop, definitely give any one of us a call. Our livestock specialists, again, able to help you with any of your livestock needs. So if you got any questions, definitely get a hold of any one of these people. Our service centers, where the locations are and their toll-free numbers, as well as the toll-free number for Mask and Manitoba Ag. And if you've got questions, comments, ideas for webinars that you'd like to see covered, give us a call, send us an email, and we'll see you next week, May the 8th. There'll be dust flying by then, I would imagine. So we'll be having lots of crop being put in the ground. So thanks for attending. Thanks for the presenters, and see you next week.